I did succeed in not buying any yarn. I did get some yarn, but I didn't buy any yarn. I figured I would pay it forward and give the rest away. I thought we'd start off a little differently today to kick off autumn, and we're going for a bushwalk. I'm really lucky in that I live near some bush, so I can just wander around sometimes if I need a bit of a brain break, and I bring my knitting along, and I'm just gonna walk and then stop and knit here and there, and I'll bring you along with me. So our first stop today is this fun little rocky plateau which overlooks a creek, and I've actually used this as a backdrop for taking FO and pattern photos before, but today I figured I would just chill on the rock and have a bit of a knit. And if we haven't met before, I'm Katrina Walser from Oliphant Cat. I'm a knitting teacher and designer and tech editor based in Sydney in Australia. And the project that I'm working on today is called the Growing Garden Cardigan, but I'm adapting it into a jumper. And it's one of two projects that I started last month. And the second place that I decided to stop and knit on it was in this little grassy field that's in the middle of the walk. It always tends to be quite empty, so it's a nice place to just stop and chill and knit. So the pattern's a slip stitch pattern, and I'm using a palette of 4 different autumnal looking colours, and it's going to be for a baby. There are some charities that I know that need baby knits, so I'll be donating it once it's done. So the other project I have on the needles at the moment is called the Southern Star Shawl, and it is an 8-ply shawl version of a baby blanket that I actually designed a couple of years ago. And so the baby blanket's a hexagon, so it's knit in 6 triangles. And given that there were already triangles, I figured it would be pretty easy to adapt it into a triangular shawl. So it's knit in different sections of alternating texture and lace, and it's worked in 5 different colors. So these are the first 2 colors, and I showed you what they were in my previous vlog. So if you want to go see February's vlog, then it has the info for those colors there. And then these are the last 3 yarns that I have, and they're going to go in this order. So I picked all of these yarns up last year at the Australian Yarn Show. And so I'm really excited to be highlighting some indie dyers in a design of mine. And it's actually going to be the Australian Yarn Show this weekend, so I am excited to go back and show them what their yarns are starting to turn into. The only thing that I'm a little worried about is that to convert the blanket into a shawl, I had to actually make each of these sections bigger, and this lace here, it's crumpling up in a way that I'm a little unsure of. So I may steam block this first just to double check that it's going to sit properly once it's done and blocked. And if that's all looking good, then I'll go ahead with the rest of the work. So after blocking, the lace is looking pretty good actually, so I'm happy to move on with the next colour. So this yarn is from Sarah from Bombed Yarns, and she's a dyer down in Tasmania. And last year at the show, she had this gorgeous brown colour on a base that didn't really match any of the other skeins I wanted to use for the shawl. But the fun thing about Sarah is that she'll dye custom colours for you, so I asked if she could make me some yarn for the shawl, and she dyed a skein of her 8-ply merino base in the brown for me. The show actually starts tomorrow, and I'll be travelling to Canberra for it for the weekend. So I'm going to wind this up so I can work on the next section while I'm away. My daughter asked me if she could help me wind my yarn. She's been doing this for a good 4 or 5 years at this point, so she's gotten pretty good at it. And my son's now at the age where I started teaching her how to do this, and he got really excited when he saw her doing it, so I let him get in on the action. Hooray! So the next day it was the Australian Yarn Show. It's held every year in Canberra, which isn't very far from Sydney, but I couldn't take the car away from my family for the weekend, so I hopped on a plane instead. I know that taking knitting through airport security makes some people nervous, so I made a video with tips for airplane knitting that I'll link above. Plane trips are a great time to get some rows in, and it's hard to beat the view. Going to the yarn show was a serious test of my self-control because I'm on a self-imposed yarn buying ban at the moment. But it was still well worth going to because the thing I really love the most about things like these are the people that I get to hang out with. The yarn show draws in people from the knitting community all across Australia, so it's a great chance to catch up with knitting friends who I rarely get to see. I also spotted a couple of my patterns for sale. The Morris & Sons store brought along my Homecoming Honeycombs beanie, and Great Southern Yarn had copies of my Starry Vista scarf. The other really fun thing at the show is that they run a speed knitting competition that anyone can enter. People always tell me that I'm fast, so I decided to try my luck last year and I won, so I entered again this year too.
Kat, you are our winner with 9 rows. Well done.
After a wonderful weekend at the yarn show, it was time to go home. I had an amazing time and picked up some fun knitting notions, plus the prize pack that I got for winning the competition was very generous. I'm planning on sharing some of it with you guys, so stick around until the end of the video for details of a giveaway that I'm running. So I'm back in Sydney and I wanted to show you how this last section looks when it's done. So I did have to frog this back a couple of times. I was chatting to people at the yarn show, so I will admit I made some mistakes here and there that I had to rip back. And then also I got to about this point here and I realized that the way that I had written the pattern was a little silly and there was a better way of doing it. But I do like trying to make sure that I'm doing the actual knitting as a bit of a pattern test. So if I rewrite a section of the pattern, I will re-knit that section to make sure that the instructions make sense. And so it did mean that I had to rip back and start again. But that is just the nature of designing for you. So this is my next skein. It's beautiful and it is from Gather Make Give, who is Alicia, and she is from the Central Coast, I think, of New South Wales. If that's wrong, I will pop her proper info on the screen. And they were previously called Natural Yarn Co. if you're looking for them or if you recognize them by that name. Now this is their Superwash 8-ply base. It's just 100% merino and the color is called Tasman Sea. It's this beautiful eucalypty sort of green. So I'm working on the last lace section and I'm at the end of it now, but I wanted to show you something quickly before I finish it off. So I use stitch markers pretty liberally when I'm knitting lace because it really saves me at the end of the day. So what I do is that I put a stitch marker in to mark the edge of every lace repeat. And that helps me make sure that the number of stitches in each lace repeat is correct. And so it also catches mistakes much earlier than it would otherwise, because if I have a mistake in a single repeat that, you know, is at the start or the middle of a row, I'll catch it much earlier instead of just realizing right at the end of the row that my stitch counts were off. So it is pretty hilarious in a pattern like this because there are only 6 stitches in each lace repeat. And at this point I'm working with 300 plus stitches. So there are a lot of stitch markers in here. I think I have over 50 stitch markers and it's my entire stitch marker stash really at the end of the day. If you don't have enough markers, you can just mark every second or third repeat and that will still save you a lot of time and a lot of thinking if you make a mistake. I will put instructions in the pattern for how to do these markers in the middle and how to handle them as you're doing your lace work. So the last yarn for the shawl is this lovely navy blue. So Cass from Skip Rope Yarn Co. is a lovely dyer based out of Newcastle in New South Wales. And this is her 8-ply SRS merino base and the color is called Witching Hour. Now the fun thing about this is that the yarn is also produced in Australia. So I know that the yarn producers for this are Great Southern Yarns, who do their own hand-dyed yarn, but they also produce bases that you can purchase and dye for yourself. So I know that they supply CAS, and it's great to know that it's both an Aussie dyer and an Aussie yarn base. One of the unique things about this pattern that I wanted to show you is that the sections where you change colours feature single row stripes. You alternate colours every row by sliding stitches to the other end of your needles every second row instead of turning your work. If you're familiar with 2-colour brioche, it's the same technique you use for that, but even if you aren't, it's fairly straightforward. I'll have full instructions and a tutorial for how to do it in the pattern. When I was done with the final textured section, this is what the shawl looked like. I was happy with the widths of each section, but wanted to do a final check of the overall width. It can be difficult to measure something like this while it's still on the needles, but when I gave it a bit of a stretch, it measured about 66 inches across. I was hoping to get between 65 to 70 inches, so this was perfect, since I figured it'd stretch a bit more after blocking as well. Speaking of blocking, I was pretty terrified about the colours running, given that the final green and blue colours were so saturated and the initial neutrals were quite light. So I threw in lots of colour catcher sheets and didn't soak the shawl for as long as I usually would. When it was done, it turned out I needn't have worried because the colour catchers didn't actually catch anything, which means that the dye didn't run out of any of the colours. And here she is! I'm so obscenely proud of this thing. I think the colours and the stitch patterns all came together so beautifully, and I'm excited to get the pattern out into the world. I'm hoping to get it out around early June, so make sure to follow along if you're interested in knitting it yourself. This shawl is actually one of my entries for this year's Sydney Royal Easter Show, which is a big agricultural show we have here in Sydney. I'm honestly not that optimistic about it placing at the Easter Show because it's fairly straightforward technique-wise, and I think they tend to reward more interesting knitting, but I'm proud of it either way. The Easter Show is held at Sydney Olympic Park, which is a bit of a drive from my house, but it's always fun dropping off the entries because you get to see some of the behind the scenes of the show as they're setting it up. Aside from my shawl, I'm entering a jumper that I made for Jonathan earlier in the year. So I dropped off my Easter show entry a couple of days ago, and I've been working on a new project over the weekend. So this pattern is called Penguin Buddy, and it's a crochet pattern by Brianna K Designs. And so I'm using a couple of different scraps for this. The first one is Rimu DK, which is a possum fur yarn, and the second one is an alpaca from Heirloom, I think. And so these are both 8-ply, and I'm glad to be using them in a toy, A, because they're both sort of furry and fuzzy, and so it feels nice for an animal toy, but also because they're both unique enough yarns that I'd find it difficult to mix them in with anything else, and so it's good that I can use them for this. And then the headpiece is this 2-ply yarn from Morris & Sons. I'm pretty sure it's Empire. And this has a bit of a story. So my husband, when we first started dating, walked into a yarn store and asked them for a recommendation, and for some reason they gave him a 2-ply yarn. So I've never used it, and I've had this in my stash for over a decade, so it's really nice that I'm able to use it now because this is going to be a present for his birthday. So I thought that'd be a really sweet sort of connection. So I'm holding this stuff triple. I thought that if I held a triple it would end up being about the same weight as an 8-ply, but my gauge with this yarn is much, much smaller, it turns out, than it is for the proper 8-ply yarns. And so this little headpiece has ended up being quite a bit smaller than it was meant to be. I think it looks okay, but it doesn't really look like the picture. But that's okay. I mean, it's not like we're going to be staring at the picture comparing them, and it looks fine as is. So I just rolled with it. And then the beak is just a tiny scrap of this yellow, which is We Are Knitters Finita. And again, this is a 1-ply yarn. I wouldn't know how to mix it in with another project really, because you can't put it in the washing machine or anything. So it's good for little scraps. And I held this double because it's a 4-ply. So I'm not sure if I have enough of the possum fur left to make the arms. So I think I'll give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, it won't take too much time to just frog it and start again. And so my plan is, if that doesn't work out, I will use the black and white yarn, and we'll use that for arms. And I think that should look pretty good. And then you also use this contrast color for the feet. The only other fun bit that I did with this is that I actually filled up a balloon with rice and put it in the bottom of the body just to give it a bit more weight. That whole process took longer than it probably did to crochet the head, because I don't own a funnel, so my daughter and I were having fun just like trying to pour rice into a balloon. It didn't work out well. But we got it done in the end, and he's nice and heavy and he should stand up well. So yeah, this is what I've got so far. I finished the arms off pretty quickly and they worked out fine. There was enough to make them, plus some leftovers for seaming. The feet though were another matter. It turned out that you had to make lots of tiny fiddly circles, which didn't play nicely with my tripled up lace weight yarn. Also, there were some parts of the pattern that I think had errors in them, so it took me a while to figure out what I was even meant to be doing. After looking at the other Ravelry projects for the pattern and asking ChatGPT what it thought the pattern was trying to say, I ended up making some sections of the feet up, but they turned out okay in the end, even though I wasted some yarn as it got all tangled up when I was trying to make magic rings. I also find seaming for toys pretty tricky. The sewing itself is fine, but I never trust that I'm getting all the pieces into the correct places. If anyone has tips for sewing up amigurumi, please let me know in the comments, because I could do with some extra help. It's the end of the month, so I figured I would do a bit of a wrap up to show you the final state of my projects, as well as the giveaway that I mentioned earlier in the video. So first off, here's my finished penguin. I did get him done in time for Wes's birthday and he really liked him, which is great. I do think that my sewing skills leave something to be desired still, because his head and his arms and his feet don't feel like they're all facing in the same direction to me, but it does also make him look like he's waddling around, which I think is very cute. So he's very cute and I love him. And I'm thinking of making myself a matching one now, but that's for another time. The other FO that I have is my shawl, but I don't have it with me because it's still at the Easter show. So those are my two FOs for the month. And then the only whip that I'm bringing with me is my multicolored cardigan that I was knitting at the very beginning of the video. Not cardigan, jumper. And that's still in the same state as it was at the beginning of the video. So for next month, if you haven't seen my previous video about my autumn knitting plans, I actually go over all of the things I'm thinking of making for the rest of autumn there. So I'd suggest watching that if you want a sneak peek into what April's knitting is going to look like. Now, in terms of what I got at the Australian Yarn Show, first off, I don't love doing haul videos, so I'm not going to go over every single thing that I got at the show, but I did succeed in not buying any yarn. I did get some yarn, but I didn't buy any yarn. So first off, the majority of what I bought were notions. And so a couple of little tools here and there and some accessories and things. So a few things I did want to highlight were this gorgeous little rainbow sheep progress keeper from JoJo's Art Studio. And I thought that was too cute to pass up. Then the two big things that I bought that I really love are these project bags from Crystal Cat Stitchery. So this one is for me and I really like it because it looks a bit more like a handbag. And I've been finding recently that I have been using my project bags as handbags because that's really the only thing I carry around anymore, except for my phone. So I like this one because it looks a bit more like a handbag, but it is all lined and nice inside, and it has a drawstring instead of a zipper. So that means it's safer for my knitting projects. But then it's got this pocket on the outside that I can stick my phone and my sunglasses in. And I just really love the print. And that's a little bit more structured than a lot of my other project bags. And this one's for Amelia because she started knitting recently. And I thought this was super cute. She loves aqua, so this worked out really well. and she's been using it quite a bit since I brought it home. Now, in terms of the yarn, I won a fairly substantial prize pack for the speed knitting competition. And it was very generous of the yarn show to give it to me. I will post a picture here of what it actually looks like when I got it. I am going to keep a couple of the skeins, but I figured I would pay it forward and give the rest away. So here is what's in this giveaway bag. Half of it is from this year's show and half of it is actually from the speed knitting competition from last year's show, because I did also win last year and the prize pack was just as generous. So some of it was still stuff that I hadn't used in the previous year. So I figured I would add it to the bag. So first off are some needle toppers. I hadn't realized until now that they're both cats. So these ones are fat cats, which are very cute. And these ones are some fun Halloween cats. Then the rest is yarn. So these two skeins are from Fancy Yarns, who are a brand that specialize in alternative or novelty yarns. So this is called Myrtle from Queensland Collection, and it's made out of eucalyptus, which I think is really cool. And this one is Soy Cotton from Better Knit, and it's made from soybean fiber and cotton. And they both feel really lovely and silky. I think the closest other yarns that are a bit more conventional that I felt to these are bamboo. They have that sort of like silky bamboo feeling. So I think they'll be really nice to knit with. Then I have 3 skeins of hand-dyed merino from the Australian Wool Store, and these are really cool colors. So the colorway is called Vivid. I'm not sure what this would knit up as, actually. I tried to look on the website to see if it's assigned pooling, and it doesn't say that it is. So I think it would just be some really cool sort of maybe stripy yarn. I find it hard to tell what variegated skeins will look like before they're knit up. But if you have an idea of what this would look like, please leave a comment below, because perhaps you're more knowledgeable about these things than I am. And it would be helpful for people to know. But it is a cool cream and neon pink and orange and yellow colorway. And these are 3 skeins of worsted weight yarn. So I am giving this whole thing away as one prize pack. Unfortunately, I can only ship to Australia. So I'm sorry, it's only open to Australian residents. But if you would like to enter the giveaway, please start your comment with a yarn ball emoji, and then let me know what your favorite thing that you've knit in the previous 3 months or like since the beginning of the year has been. And I will give this away to one lucky winner at the end of next month. So that's what I've got for the giveaway, and those are my FOs. In terms of a stash update, I have ended up in a surplus again because I used up some yarn for my FOs, quite a bit of yarn actually, but then I added a bunch from the giveaway pack that I got from the yarn show. So I used up 1,050 meters, but I added 1,146 meters. So I'm almost exactly 100 meters up in my stash, which brings my current stash total to 37,642 meters. It is what it is. One of these days I will end up in the negative. I would really like to stash down. But today I'm just grateful that I got all this beautiful yarn from the yarn show as a prize. So that's all I've got for you for the month. And if you would like to follow along with my progress, then you can subscribe to the channel right here and hit the bell down below to get notifications for when the next video comes out. Then you can also catch up on any previous podcast episodes that you've missed by watching this playlist right here. But until then, I've been Katrina Walser from Oliphant Cat. Happy knitting!